Amanda Waller is back at it again, and this time she's looking for a way to intentionally isekai herself. As the portal is open, the scientists warn her that the energy levels are too low to sustain it, but she isn't concerned and tells them to just increase the power supply. The scientists are still worried about what will happen if they put too much strain on her, but as far as Amanda is concerned, the girl they are using to open the portal is nothing more than a tool to achieve her goals. Joker and Harley heard about the truck-free isekai opportunity, and they immediately started heading straight for it. Imagine the chaos they could cause if they got some kind of broken ability, but before they get there, Harley pulls the handbrake and tells Joker they should stop for a bit to get a good drinks, because it's always better to go on adventures while drunk. Harley enters the bar, but it's a lot less rowdy than she remembers it being even after she throws a bunch of stolen cash. She immediately knows something is up, so she approaches the bar and asks where Keiichi is, and the bartender says Keiichi is out with a cold. However, Keiichi doesn't exist, so Harley knows this has to be a setup. A fight breaks out, and Harley tells Joker not to come in since it's not safe. Meanwhile, Amanda's portal is beginning to go out of control, but she keeps telling the operators to increase the power output. As Harley's bar fight is still going on, Joker turns the car around and drives straight into the building to get her out of there, but Amanda's military defenses show up and fire missiles at him, so he is forced to retreat. It may be crazy, but his driving skills are no joke. Harley eventually manages to escape the bar and get on top of a nearby roof, but as she's trying to call Joker so he can pick her up, she gets attacked by a blade-wielding samurai. The attacker jumps down to end Harley, and at first Harley is able to hold her own with a baseball bat, but then she gets disarmed, so she is now forced to do nothing but evade the samurai's sword strikes. Harley runs away until she eventually grabs a hold of a metal pipe, but the pipe doesn't turn out to be a good weapon, so she ends up on the ground with the sword pointed at her. But instead of slashing her, the samurai uses the hilt of her sword to knock Harley out. Harley gets taken into custody, but the soldiers couldn't get a hold of Joker, and Harley is glad to hear this. She vows to make it out of here and back to Joker someday, but that not going to be today as she gets knocked out again. Meanwhile, Amanda's portal has gone full critical, and after the explosion, it is officially open. And after achieving her goal, the first thing Amanda does is murder the entire team of scientists. 6 months later, Amanda is at an isolated base to gather unwilling volunteers for her isekai plan. It is a facility housing the supervillains which have been captured over the years, and the prison warden, Wade, tries to talk Amanda out of using supervillains for her plan since there's no telling what might happen if something goes wrong, but Amanda simply shuts the warden up by informing him that she has his Discord chat logs, so unless he wants her to leak them, he had better just do what she says. Wade relents and opens the cell where Harley is being kept, and this must be Norway or something because how is she allowed to have pizza and a television in her cell? Amanda turns the television off and tells Harley to get out because she has a job for her to go on. And while Harley doesn't want to, the guns pointed at her are pretty persuasive, so she begins walking out. But before she leaves, the warden stops her and mentions that she had a deal with him that if he gets her all the stuff she wants, then she would give him the Gluck Gluck 9000, but Harley just kicks him in the nuts and says she would only ever do that for Joker. Harley is subsequently tased and taken out of the cells, and while the warden is grieving over his lost balls, Amanda walks over to him and says he needs to hurry up since she has more prisoners she wants to free. The warden calls her insane for wanting to use such dangerous criminals for her mission, but Amanda was always insane. After Amanda is done, Harley as well as several other prisoners are sent through the portal, and eventually Harley wakes up handcuffed to a bench. The guy next to her asks if she's finally awake, and Harley is upset because she was hoping to hear Joker's voice instead. The guy now complains about getting stuck with a crazy girl on his team, but the guy across from him says that no way to talk to a lady. He thinks they should already know who he is, while Harley thinks he's pretty hot. She has never heard of him before. He's apparently a movie star or something, but he's pissed that they don't recognize him. Besides him is a guy wearing a potato sack in his head, and when they ask about the sack, he just says he is wearing it to hide his ugly face because he is on a mission for peace. Now that everyone on the team has gotten acquainted with one another, the guy that's in charge of them comes in and says they will be arriving at their destination soon. He then plays a message from Amanda saying that 5 of them, along with her agent, are tasked with establishing and protecting a series of bridgeheads that will serve as the framework for research and resource acquisition from uncharted territory. That doesn't sound like an easy mission, and honestly, they're starting to question why they should listen to Amanda in the first place. So she explains that she has planted bombs in their necks, so if they disobey her order, try to escape, or even piss her off, she can make their heads go boom whenever she wants. Even under the threat of exploding, Deadshot still doesn't see a reason to listen to Amanda, so she brings up the fact that she knows he has a daughter, and she could easily go after her instead. Deadshot is enraged and swears he will make Amanda pay if she lays a finger on his daughter, but she says she won't have to as long as he does as he is instructed. Now that everyone is clear on the mission, the agent tells them all that their gear is all in the crates at the back of the plane, so he will remove their handcuffs so that they can all get changed. But before that, Harley mentioned that there were supposed to be 5 of them, so they ask where the last guy is. The agent is about to answer, but then the plane begins to shake as the pilots have been killed somehow. They end up crash landing in the middle of a fantasy battle, and the knights have no idea what's going on, so they decide to go investigate. Meanwhile, in the plane, the team managed to survive the crash landing, but as Harley walks up to the front, it looks like the agent wasn't so lucky. However, she has no reason to care that he died, so she uses a random sword which got lodged in the plane to free herself and head outside to check out their situation. However, as she tries to step on the ground, she nearly falls to her death, but luckily she gets saved by Deadshot at the last second. As the others get themselves free, Pretty Boy tries to open the door on the other side of the plane, but it seems to be stuck, so he transforms his hand and smashes the door. They are all surprised that Pretty Boy is actually a metahuman, but that would explain why he had a special restraining device. As they exit, they are shocked by the world they find themselves in, so they are starting to question if it is even real in the first place. They ask Potato Sack Guy if he knows what's going on, since he seems to believe this is a mission of peace, but he doesn't know anything either. Just then, they see a knight get murdered by a group of orcs nearby, and since they are human as well, the orcs attack them as well. Harley can't understand what the orcs are saying, so Pretty Boy tries to explain to them that they are outsiders and aren't involved in whatever war they are fighting. But the orcs don't understand him either and attempt to kill him immediately. The murderous intent and horrible smell coming from the orcs lets them know that this is all real. The others are still in disbelief, but Harley is ecstatic since this is exactly the kind of adventure she always wanted. Just then, King Shark busts out of the back of the chopper and begins chomping down on the orcs like there's no tomorrow. Meanwhile, Harley begins taking out as many orcs as possible. Potato Sack Guy is also laying waste to the orcs, and with his obsession with peace, we find out that he is actually called Peacemaker. Pretty Boy doesn't want to have to deal with the smelly orcs, so he attempts to run away, but once it is clear he can't escape, he transforms to fight them, and we find out that he is called Clayface. In the middle of all the chaos, Deadshot managed to get to his equipment, so he begins shooting down the orcs one by one. However, there are too many of them, so he decides it would be better to target their leader directly. Deadshot tries to line up a shot, but some of the leader's guards are in the way, so he has to get creative and jumps into the air so he can have a clear shot. And the second the leader is in his sights, he shoots him right between the eyes. With their boss dead, all the orcs get scared and run away. After the fighting is over, the Night Army finally arrives to find out what's going on, and as soon as Clayface sees them, he knows exactly what's going on. He can't explain how it happened, but it's clear that they have been transported to a fantasy world, so he believes they will be treated like summoned heroes. However, they just get locked up in jail. In the fantasy world, the Queen's convoy is passing a war-torn village, and while the villagers plead with her for help since they are starving, she clearly doesn't give a damn about them. Back at the castle, the royal officials are busy watching footage of the battle with the orcs, and they are all convinced that their success is solely due to the Queen taking the time to show up to the battlefield and acting as a cheerleader. Some other, more sensible people in the meeting mention how the Queen didn't do a damn thing to help, and in fact, there are still thousands of citizens starving every day. However, the other officials don't see why they should care about what's happening to the filthy peasants who can't afford the latest Bugatti horse. Just then, the Queen calls for everyone be silent since even if the battle was won, she doesn't consider this a victory at all, not until every last orc in this world has been eradicated. The reasonable knight then speaks up and asks the Queen what she plans to do with the strange people they found. They played a big role in turning the tide in the kingdom's favor, but she disregards that and tells the knight to forget about them and start planning for the next battle. The knight tries to argue that they may be useful assets in the war, but the Queen is having none of it and calls him a coward for trying to use outside help to fight in the war. The Queen calls for the meeting to come to a close, but before she gets up to leave, the Princess Fiona asks for permission to speak. She believes the strange people may be their saviors after all, but the Queen tells her to keep quiet since she already said they are not going to use outside help. With that, the meeting is brought to a close, but the princess still can't come to terms with the situation of the kingdom under her mother's rule. Children are out there fighting over a loaf of bread while she gets a full 5-star meal every day. She chooses not to eat her food in silent protest, but then the knight, Cecil, enters her room and reminds her that starving herself isn't going to help any of the starving people outside no matter how much she does it. Cecil may have terrible judgment when it comes to hairstyles, but Fiona understands that he is right. However, she didn't call him here to lecture her. She called him because she has a favor she would like to ask of him. After they were brought to the prison, Harley wakes up to find all of them placed in cells alongside several captured monsters. Clayface realizes that if they've been left in prison for this long and no one has come to let them out yet, then that must mean they aren't being welcomed as heroes. He is frustrated since they were the only reason that the last battle was won, so by all accounts they should be getting better treatment than this. However, he still thinks he can make this work. For now, their biggest problem is that they are running on a timer since according to what Amanda said, if they are not near the transmitter for more than 72 hours, then the bombs in their necks are going to go off. As of now, it has been 12 hours since they got captured, meaning they have 60 more hours to get back there. Clayface really doesn't like how his fantasy adventure is playing out, but since it has come to this, he decides to put the adventure on hold and leave the prison. The others tell him it's not possible to break down the bars since they were made to hold back monsters, but Clayface never intended to break the bars down, he just slips right through instead. He tells them to wait here while he figures out what to do next, but he does warn that he may be forced to leave them behind as part of his character development. Hearing that Clayface doesn't intend to come back for them, Harley and Deadshot start calling for the guards to capture Clayface, since if they're not getting out, then no one is. The guards immediately spot Clayface and slap some magic handcuffs on him, so now he is no longer able to use his powers. Immediately after this, the guard comes to let all of them out since it's lunchtime, if you can call this food anyway. While they are at the lunch table, Deadshot asks Clayface if he is willing to help them escape as well now, but he answers that he can't escape at all anymore. Thanks to these handcuffs, he can't transform anymore, so they are really stuck here now. Just then, a couple ogres come over to their table and try to kick the group out, so even though Deadshot doesn't understand their language, he has been to prison enough times to know what they are trying to do, and he's not going to let them have their way. However, before Deadshot can start a fight, Clayface tells him to wait a minute since causing a commotion isn't a great idea when you are the new guy. They could have solved this a lot easier if King Shark had come here with them since he's the strongest among them, but he is still sleeping in the cell. So to avoid a confrontation while he can't use his powers, Clayface tries to de-escalate the situation, but the ogres don't understand what he is saying and just punch him across the room instead. After this, all bets are off, so Deadshot flips the table and everyone starts fighting. Despite being up against ogres, the team are much more capable in a fight, so Harley gets on top of the main ogre and starts smacking him around with a bowl, while Peacemaker overpowers two other ogres. By the time the guards get called, the team has taken all the ogres out and are basking in their glory. But this is a prison, so the guards pull out punishment wands and pin them all to the ground, after which they have everyone sent to solitary confinement for causing trouble. Once inside, they find out they aren't alone as there is another human there, and he says his name is Rick Flag. He was sent here on a mission by Amanda, but since the team was sent here as well, it looks like Amanda sent backup after all. The team is confused, so Rick offers to explain what's going on and tells them that they aren't the first team to be sent here. Rick was the leader of a task force whose goal was to make first contact with the people of this world through the portal Amanda had opened, but Deadshot doesn't understand why they would go through all the trouble of going to another world. However, he then remembers that Amanda works for the United States, and where there's oil, the United States will always be there to claim it. So basically, the original team failed, so Amanda sent in a bunch of criminals since no one would care if they died. They still have no choice but to complete the mission, so Peacemaker asks Rick if he knows where the transmitter for the bombs in their necks are located. They need to get there so that they don't end up dead, but since the helicopter is destroyed, they have to assume that the transmitter would be somewhere near the gate that brought them here. Rick offers to show them the way back as long as they help him escape as well, and while the others don't like Rick, they don't have many options if they want to keep their heads. Just then, they hear a stomach rumbling, and it's King Shark who has just woken up from his nap. He says he is hungry, so he is about to eat the others, but at the last second, they manage to convince him that there's a lot more tasty food on the other side of the door, so he just needs to break it down. Shark likes the idea of tasty food, so he does his best to knock the door down, but this attracts the attention of the guards. As Shark finally breaks through the door, the guard tries to use the wand to subdue him, but Deadshot distracts him while Harley steals his wand and smacks him from behind, knocking him into the roof. Harley is surprised by how much force the wand was able to generate, but the thing shatters after a single use, so it's not useful anymore. Now that the guard is knocked out, Clayface walks over to his body and releases the restraints on his wrists. He is now able to use his powers again, and the first thing he does is to free all the other monsters that were trapped here so that they can provide a distraction. And with all the chaos going on, they are able to take out all the guards with the help of the monsters and destroy the prison altogether. Meanwhile, Cecil is heading to the prison at the request of the princess, since she believes enlisting the help of the strange people would be the best way to end the war and get the lives of the people back to normal. Cecil doesn't agree with her choice, but he still chooses to fulfill the princess' request. However, as he approaches the prison, he finds that it has been completely taken over. Meanwhile, on the roof, the team and the monsters are all getting along really well after they helped everyone escape. So as they see Cecil's carriage approaching, they all joke that it's going to take a lot more than that if the kingdom wants to reclaim the prison. As Cecil gets to the front gate, he is confronted by the team, but they still can't understand anything he is saying. Clayface recalls Cecil as the one who sent them to the prison in the first place, and the others recognize him after they see his balding head. Cecil has no idea what they just said, but he knows they are making fun of his hair, so he pulls out his sword and attempts to strike Harley down. However, Shark stops the sword with his teeth and eats it in one bite, but he soon regrets the decision as Cecil recalls the sword and slices open Shark's stomach in the process. Fortunately, Shark begins to glow and the wound in his stomach heals itself, but they are still nowhere near finding a peaceful resolution. Rick comes out and tells everyone to calm down before they do something they'll end up regretting, and he asks Shark to avoid eating any more weapons since it is bad for him. Deadshot doesn't want to back down from a fight, but Rick says there is no need to fight since he can negotiate with Cecil. He has been in this prison a lot longer than the rest of them have, so he has learned a little bit about this world's language from the orcs. Cecil definitely understands what Rick is saying, but every single sentence he speaks is full of insults, so Cecil isn't willing to cooperate. He's just about to attack them when he remembers that the princess personally asked him to acquire their assistance, so he puts his sword away and says he will take them to the castle so they can meet the queen. The group eventually arrives at the castle, and as the queen enters to hear what they have to say, she casts a spell on them so that she can understand what they are saying. Rick speaks up first and thanks the queen for agreeing to meet them, but he has a request to ask of her. The queen sees no reason to listen to the requests of someone who is still her prisoner. However, Rick informs her that he has valuable information that would be useful to her in the war, so all he asks for in return is permission to move around freely. By now, the queen must have realized that the beasts have become increasingly strong recently, but what she doesn't know is that the beasts' newfound strength lies in the fact that their commanders are people from Earth like them. Harley and the others finally piece together what must have happened as Rick says this, so it is likely that Rick's initial team was also made of unwilling convicts, but once they got here, they betrayed Rick and joined up with the Beast Empire. So basically, the whole reason the kingdom is losing this war is because Rick couldn't control his team. The queen has every right to be mad at them for it, but Peacemaker speaks up and says they will do whatever it takes to atone for Rick's mistake and restore peace to her land. But she takes Rick hostage as an insurance policy. Cecil is on board with the idea of letting them fight on the front lines alongside his men, but the queen has made her decision. As Rick is being led away, he tells the others that they had better get the job done. Otherwise, they won't be able to find the transmitter since he is the only one who knows where it is. Now that he's gone, Harley says she's kind of hungry, so she would like to get something to eat, and they should probably get something for Shark before he decides to put them on the menu again. Also, they are going to need the queen to give them their stuff back. Once they've gotten their gear back, they all suit up and head out to the battlefield. But as the battle is raging on, they don't get involved since Cecil had told them that his army can win without their help. Clayface still thinks they should help them since it might improve their relationship with the kingdom, but in all honesty, Deadshot doesn't want to have to deal with the beasts down there. They are insanely strong and they are fighting with no regard for their life, so handling them would be difficult for him. He wonders what kind of training the wolves must have gone through to be fighting like this, but Harley doesn't think they were trained to do any of this. It is much more likely to be brainwashing. That must mean they are dealing with a villain that is skilled at brainwashing people. And if that's the case, then Deadshot knows exactly who they are up against, and the guy used to be an old friend of his, so thinks the guy will listen to him. They all go around the side of the fort and Clayface tries out something new as he touches the walls of the fort and causes a hole to appear in it. The others didn't know he could do this, but since he can destroy the walls will, Deadshot asks if he can just bring the whole fortress down, so they don't have to go through all this effort. Unfortunately, Clayface doesn't think he can do that since there's not enough moisture here. Ever since he got here, he has been able to feel something like magic coursing through his body, and the others must have experienced something similar. Clayface's usual ability is to control the clay within his body, but now he can control any kind of clay. It's still going to take some getting used to, but it's sure to come in handy. They begin fighting their way through the halls of the fort while taking down the wolves one by one, and eventually, they make it up to the roof where the mastermind is hiding. Deadshot calls out to Ratcatcher, but even though Deadshot seems to think they are old friends, Ratcatcher absolutely hates him. Back in prison, Rat would get bullied by the other prisoners a lot for being a rat-loving weirdo, so Deadshot decided to intervene, but in doing so he roasted Rat beyond repair. And from then on, Deadshot would keep pestering Rat no matter where he went, always trying to be helpful, but only ever making things worse. He would give Rat cheese and take his food instead, He would show up while Rat was taking a shit and give him a free but unwanted haircut, and he even started sourcing rat-smashing DVDs for Rat for some reason. So after all the humiliation he has suffered at Deadshot's hands, Rat wants nothing more than to kill him. His original powers only allowed him to control the minds of rats, but in this world he can control any beast he wishes, and there are a lot of them. As the group fights off the wolves, Peacemaker realizes that they need to take out the rat to put an end to this, but as he fires a bullet at Rat, it gets blocked by a nearby wolf. Getting close to Rat will be difficult, so Clayface points out the giant water tanks above them, so Deadshot takes them out and the roof floods with water. Now that there is adequate moisture, Clayface is able to fully control the clay in the castle walls, so he makes a pit below the wolves, causing them to fall several stories below, and now that he has a clear shot, Peacemaker aims straight for Rat's head. However, before the bullet hits its mark, Rat is saved by that samurai girl from earlier, and Harley has a major score to settle with that girl for separating her from Joker. After the damage Clayface did to the tower, the whole thing crumbles to the ground, so Cecil starts yelling at them for destroying everything. Deadshot justifies it by saying Cecil would have lost the battle if they didn't intervene, and all they need to do is rebuild the fort and everything will be as good as new. But for now, they've done their job, so they are going home. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the Queen and her cabinet were watching the battle unfold, and they are all pleased with the outcome, especially Fion, who is still really interested in Harley. At the same time, the samurai has taken Rat to a secluded cave and reminds him that she isn't saving him out of kindness. Their emperor hates incompetence, so if he messes up again, there won't be a next time. Rat is well aware of this, so he doesn't intend to fail on his next mission. After their success in taking back what's left of the fort, the team heads back to the castle to receive their reward, however, as Harley wakes up from a nap and finds that they are still in a cell. It looks like nothing has changed regarding how they are being treated. Rick asks if they really got the job done since the agreement was that reclaiming the fort would earn them their freedom, but Deadshot says they did nothing wrong. Yeah, they may have gone a little overboard and destroyed the fort, but the job was still done. Right now, he is more worried about their bombs since by Peacemaker's count, they've only got 12 hours left before they blow up. Just then, they all notice Fion walking up to them, and while they've never met before, Clayface assumes she must be the princess, so he starts laying on the charm, but Deadshot interrupts him and gets straight to the point by asking Fion when they are going to be released. Fion apologizes, but she has no way of knowing that information. Although she is sure that their recent success in retaking the fort would mean they would be treated well, but it doesn't sound very convincing when they are all still behind bars. Fion then looks over to Harley, and Harley asks what she wants, but Fion can't bring herself to say it. Harley is a little irked by this, so she tells Fion that she noticed how she was staring at her earlier, so if she's got something to say, then she should get it over with. The others ask why Harley is so upset about Fion staring at her, but she can't help it since Fion reminds her of her former self. Just then, Cecil enters the prison with the keys to the cells because the Queen has called for the team, and Deadshot wonders what took so long. We get a flashback to Fion's childhood as she was climbing a roof with some of her friends. The view they got to see was wonderful. Fion was impressed even though her castle is taller, but the kid reminds her that she is disguised as a commoner right now, so she can't talk about her royal status here. Fion apologized and changed the subject to ask if the kid's little brother is feeling better now. The kid says his brother is doing okay, but the price of bread has been hiked up again, and there are no more chimneys in town for him to sweep, so times are tough. Just then, she notices that Cecil is calling for her, so she needs to go home soon or she will get scolded, but before she goes, the kid asks if she knows when the war will end. Fion regrettably can't say for certain. All she knows is that the fighting is happening over by the mountains. Later that day, Fion was getting scolded by the Queen for going into town to play with the commoners. Fion scowls at Cecil, who at the time had a decent haircut, but the Queen informs her that Cecil wasn't the one who switched on her, it was some city guards who recognized her. She reminds Fion that as royalty she has a different duty than that of the peasants, but before she leaves, Fion asks her what the duty of royalty is supposed to be, so the Queen answers that it is to put an end to the war. Unfortunately, the Queen wasn't very successful in ending the war, which inevitably led to the deaths of all of Fion's friends as they got caught up in the violence. Back to the present, Cecil calls Fion to remind her that the War Council meeting is about to begin. Fion apologizes and gets ready to attend, but Cecil reminds her that there is no expectation for her to make an appearance there. Fion knows that, but this is something she wants to do so she can play a part in stopping this war. At the meeting, the council is shown a recording of hundreds of Imperial Beast soldiers marching in for an attack. They all begin to panic at the sight of this, but the Queen calls for everyone to remain calm and asks for a status update. At the moment, the Imperial army is marching towards the plains through the forest. Fortunately, they are moving at a slow pace, but with their large numbers, The guards that have been stationed in the forest won't be enough to handle them. So if nothing is done to change the situation, the Imperial forces will be able to cross the bridge to the kingdom in less than 2 days. That would be a terrible outcome, but while everyone is panicking, Harley speaks up and asks why they are still in shackles when the deal was for them to be freed after they reclaimed the fort. The Queen says they didn't hold up their end of the bargain since they destroyed the entire fort when they were supposed to reclaim it for her. But she'll forget about that for now. Instead, she asks Rick to get up since he had mentioned having useful information about the Empire's senior officers, so she wants to know who was leading the army and how they could possibly manage to maintain control over such a large number of troops. However, before Rick gives her that information, he asks to be informed of how this war started so that he can better understand the situation. So the Queen asks Cecil to explain. The kingdom has been waging war with the Imperial army for many decades now, but the intensity of the war has risen dramatically over the course of the past 6 months. A main factor in this shift is the fact that the elves and beastmen betrayed the kingdom in order to side with the Empire. Rick is surprised to hear this, and in fact, the beastmen that they fought while trying to reclaim the fort were originally subjects of the kingdom. Peacemaker calls them traitors for abandoning their kingdom, but Clayface thinks they might have just gotten fed up with how poorly they were being treated. Rick tells the Queen that he is fairly certain the one who caused the beastmen to betray her is the rat catcher. He had the power to communicate with rats back on Earth, but it's possible that coming to this world granted him the ability to communicate with beasts as well and force his will upon them. The Queen asks if they have any suggestions on how to catch him, but they don't really have any good ideas. And now that he thinks about it, Deadshot wonders why Rick wasn't able to blow the head off Ratcatcher and the other criminals when they went rogue, since Amanda had to have planted bombs in their necks as well. Rick has no idea how it happened, but before he realized what was going on, the bombs in their necks had been defused. That's probably why Amanda set the current team's bombs to go off on a timer. Since the team isn't able to offer any useful insight, the Queen is about to send them back to prison, but that's when Harley suddenly remembers something Joker had told her about hunting rats. She relays the plan to everyone, and they think it's a good idea, but the only problem is that it will require them to not only stop Rat's army, but to also force Ratcatcher up to the front lines so they can attack him, and they just don't have enough people for that. Rick turns to the Queen and asks her if she would be willing to lend him some of her soldiers to ensure the success of this mission, and once it is complete, Rick asks that they be freed. The council members begin to insult Rick for even daring to think they could lend him some soldiers, but Fiona speaks up and says she thinks it would be beneficial to put some trust in these people for the sake of the kingdom. However, she is immediately shut down when the council members ask her if she is willing to take responsibility if Rick ends up getting their soldiers killed for no reason. Cecil adds that it would also be far too reckless since the only knights currently available for battle are the ones who are directly under him, and even all of his knights wouldn't be enough for the plan they have in mind. However, Harley says they don't need any human knights in the first place since she knows where they can find a ton of able-bodied warriors for the mission. A while later, camp is being set up by the destroyed fort when Harley sees the ogres and orcs from prison walking in. She walks up to the ogre to greet him, and he still respects Harley a lot for being able to beat him up, so he agrees to follow her orders. Harley gets on top of a barrel to address the rest of the beasts, and she tells them all that if they work hard in this next battle, they will be freed from the prison, otherwise they'll be sent straight back so they all get pumped. Everything seems to be under control, so Cecil walks away and lets Harley handle the rest. Meanwhile, Rick gives Clayface a job to do, and he's clearly not happy about it, but he still walks off to get it done. While Clayface is doing that, Rick yells at King Shark to get him to stop eating all their food rations, and Peacemaker is just cleaning his gun and not getting involved. Just then, Cecil comes up to Rick to have a chat, and from what he knows about the situation, Rick is a soldier, and the team are a bunch of criminals. So he asks if it doesn't bother him to have to fight alongside such heinous criminals. And of course it bothers him. He would never have chosen to deal with these lunatics if he had a say in the matter, but as a soldier, he is forced to follow orders from his superiors. As night arrives, Clayface returns after getting his job done, and Rick thanks him for his help. Clay structures aren't his specialty, but they'll be sufficient for battle. Now it's time for them to discuss their battle plan, so Rick points to a map to show where they are located, and the barriers Clayface set up, along with the defensive line of ogres and knights, should be enough for them to halt the progress of the Imperial army. Cecil notices that Deadshot is missing, so he asks what he could possibly be up to at a time like this, and he is informed that Deadshot is perched up on the roof as a sniper, so he decides to just let him do his thing up there. At the same time, Clayface asks Cecil if he can tell them about Princess Fiona. Cecil asks why he wants to know all of a sudden, so Clayface explains that it looked like Fiona wanted to ask them something earlier, but she couldn't bring herself to say it, so he wants to know what kind of person she is. Cecil explains that Fiona is a kind-hearted girl, and there's no one in the castle who cares about the people of the kingdom as much as she does. While he is talking, Harley scoffs at her and says Fiona is just a wimp who can't stand up for herself, and Cecil is prepared to square up with Harley for insulting his princess in front of him. However, a moment later, King Shark gets a whiff of the enemy approaching, so they alert the troops that it is time for battle. Cecil says he will head out to command his troops while the others take charge of the ogres, but Harley and the others have no intention of doing any fighting right now. The ogres are perfectly capable of doing it by themselves, and none of them want to deal with the hassle of fighting. As Ratcatcher and his army are approaching, he notices the giant barriers in the middle of the valley and the soldiers stationed behind them, so he realizes that the kingdom must be trying to intercept him. However, he finds the whole thing hilarious because he is confident that he and his obedient puppets can easily overwhelm them. Cecil's soldiers are starting to question if they are really going to be able to win this battle when they are up against so many opponents, but Cecil gets their attention and reminds them they are fighting to protect the lives of the citizens of the kingdom, so even if they have to die in the process, they will defend it with everything they have. Ratcatcher is still holding a grudge against Deadshot, so says he is going to enjoy ripping him limb from limb when he finally finds him. But then a bullet whizzes past him and Ratcatcher ducks to the floor. He realizes Deadshot must have fired a bullet at him, but since he is still alive, he believes Deadshot must have missed. He then orders his beasts to begin the attack, but they all keep ignoring him and standing still. So he tries pushing them to start attacking, but that's when he realizes that his magic staff has been destroyed. Deadshot was aiming for the staff all along, since earlier that day he called a meeting with everyone to discuss a theory he had. He realized that there should be no way Ratcatcher's powers give him full control over Beastmen, so he assumes his power must be coming from the staff he was carrying last time they fought. That's why they set up the barrier and gathered troops to fight, also that they could bait Ratcatcher into raising his staff so that Deadshot could destroy it. And now that he has no control over the beasts anymore, they quickly turn on him for enslaving them. After they are done tearing Ratcatcher to shreds, they all start wondering where they are and what they were doing here. Cecil doesn't know what's going on, but apparently the beasts no longer want to fight, so the battle has been won. And as per the agreement they had with the Queen, they are now free to do whatever they want, so they all leave Sir Rick and get them to the gate and reset their bomb timers. At the same time, the War Council has just been informed of the team's victory, so everyone is happy, all except the Queen, who looks like she has a mix of surprise, rage, and constipation. Rick leads them all to the gate so they can get their bomb timers reset, but the gate is really high up, so Deadshot asks how exactly they are supposed to reach it. Just then, all their necks begin flashing, meaning they don't have much time before the bombs go off. But Rick has no control over resetting the timers, so he has no idea how it's supposed to happen. Peacemaker tells them all to calm down since it's easy to figure out if the reset signal actually worked or not. According to his estimates, the bombs should be going off any minute now, so if the timer ends and they don't get blown to Kingdom Come, then it worked. They all brace themselves for their possible deaths, but as Peacemaker counts down to 0, no one explodes, meaning the timers have been successfully reset. All this not exploding has made Harley hungry, so since they aren't going to die anymore, she suggests they head back and get some food. However, Rick reminds everyone that the timer being reset just means they have 3 more days before the bombs go off, so they can't get careless. The fact that the bombs were reset means Amanda still needs them to complete their mission, which is to establish a base so America can start stealing resources and doing research here. However, for the time being, they need to ensure that they maintain friendly relations with the kingdom, and to do that, they need to help the kingdom win their war. Everyone's on board with the mission, so they set out on their war campaign and slowly make their way into the Empire's territory. And due to the long battles, Deadshot's worst nightmare happens. He runs out of bullets. Without ammunition, he's basically just a regular dude now. He knew the bullets would run out eventually, which is why he made so much effort to make sure he didn't waste them. But that didn't stop Harley from wasting them. Personally, Cecil is glad Deadshot won't be able to use his guns anymore since he thinks it's an unfair weapon, but Deadshot retorts that no one cares about fairness when they are at war. The lack of bullets affects Deadshot the most, but Harley and Peacemaker also use guns, so if there aren't any bullets, it's going to be bad news for them as well. Harley doesn't seem too bothered by it since if worse comes to worse, she can always just start using a frying pan or something. Just then, Rick tells everyone he has an idea for them to replenish their ammunition. When he first got here, his helicopter didn't crash, so all the equipment on it should still be in one piece. The only problem is that the helicopter is currently sitting on a mountain and getting there would take the whole day even if they left immediately, so Rick thinks they should return to the fort first. However, Deadshot doesn't care since he needs those bullets, but before he starts walking off, Harley grabs his jacket and asks him to wait until she has had the chance to get a bath. Deadshot caves and agrees to return, but Harley starts complaining because she didn't realize they were so far away from the fort and it's taking a really long time to get back. Since it's gotten so late, they are going to have to wait till morning to start heading for the helicopter. As they arrive at the fort, they find all the ogres and orcs getting ready for a dinner party, and it must be a grand occasion for them to have busted out the giant frying pan. Harley asks what they are celebrating, so one of the orcs explains that Cecil gifted them a ton of booze as a reward for fighting for the kingdom, and while they don't know why Cecil did it, they don't care because it's free booze. The beasts seem to be happy with their new lives as they are given the freedom to do whatever they want with the place. But Deadshot and the others call them naive for thinking the kingdom cares about them just because they were given their freedom and rewards. However, the beasts have no choice but to be content with the situation, although the team probably wouldn't understand since they are strong enough to make their own rules. By the next morning, the team is ready to set off for the mountains. But before they leave, Harley asks for a frying pan since she still thinks it'd be an awesome weapon. And after that, the team sets off on their journey to the mountains. However, as they approach the summit, they are disappointed to see that a dragon has turned the helicopter into its nest. Everyone starts berating Rick for landing his helicopter here, but he had no idea dragon even existed when he first got here, so there's no way he would have known that a dragon would take over the helicopter. In any case, they still need to get to the ammo in the helicopter, so Clayface says he will handle it. He takes a step back and does his best to imitate a dragon mating call, but his dragon disguise is really ugly, so the dragon ignores him. In fact, the dragon was so offended by Clayface's ugly dragon that it comes down to personally wipe them out. They all start running for their lives as the dragon tries to kill them, but unfortunately, the dragon ends up grabbing King Shark and flying off with him, so the team has to think of a plan to save him. Clayface uses his powers to create a clay wall to block the dragon's path, and while the dragon is distracted, Rick and Peacemaker head to the helicopter so they can recover their ammo. In the meantime, Deadshot loads up his last bullet and aims for the dragon's eye in an attempt to take it out. However, the dragon proves to be too durable, so his bullet just bounces off his body. Fortunately, that shot was able to annoy the dragon enough to make it spit King Shark out, but they also caused it to attack them instead. So before they get cooked alive, Clayface creates a mud wall to save them. Thanks to his unexplained healing factor, King Shark is perfectly fine, but still on fire. The others are relieved that he's okay, although they don't understand how, but a few seconds later, the mud wall Clayface made to protect them crumbles to the floor since the fire dried it out, and that leaves them with no other protection from the dragon's fire. Just as the dragon is getting ready to fire another blast, Harley remembers that she's got a magic frying pan, so she takes that bad boy and used it to knock the fireball back. However, Harley is so busy celebrating her cool stunt that she forgets that the dragon can do melee damage too, so Deadshot has to carry her to safety. While running, he wonders why the others are taking so long to get the weapons ready, so Harley jumps off his shoulders and says she'll go check it out. Up in the helicopter, she sees Rick sorting through the weapons, and she spots something that could be really useful: a boomstick. She tosses it over to Deadshot, and Peacemaker creates a distraction while Clayface holds the dragon in place, so with the shot perfectly lined up, Deadshot blasts the dragon straight in the neck, causing it to fail around and eventually die. Now that the threat is dealt with, they all head back to the helicopter so they can restock on supplies. While Deadshot is grabbing everything he needs, Clayface asks Peacemaker what he did to get the dragon's attention, so he pulls out the dragon egg he stole and says he used it as a hostage. Harley can't believe Peacemaker would do something like that since even though they are all criminals, using babies as hostages is a new kind of low. Peacemaker doesn't really feel bad about it though, and he even says he will make an omelet out of the egg, but Harley stops him and takes the egg for safekeeping. Just then, the egg happens to hatch, and since Harley is the first thing the baby dragon sees, it immediately thinks she's its mama, so Harley decides to keep it and names the dragon Arthur. Meanwhile, Rick contacts Amanda to inform her of the mission status. He says progress is being made, and they currently have an amicable relationship with the kingdom. However, the previous team have all gone rogue, so Amanda orders Rick to do whatever it takes to kill them. Rick returns to the team, and Peacemaker has been trying to get the helicopter to start flying, but the dragon ruined it, so they are going to have to walk back to the fort. After a long walk, it is already nighttime and Deadshot is in a good mood because he's fully stocked up on ammo. But as they approach the fort, they are shocked to find it burnt to the ground. Harley is forced to watch as her ogre friend suffers and gets decapitated, so while she doesn't know who these pricks are, she and the team are going to make them pay for what they've done. As the elves notice Harley emerge from the darkness, they all charge towards her, but one gets taken out by Deadshot, while another gets the life close lined out of her. An elf in the background is seen casting a spell, but Peacemaker sneaks up behind her and points a gun straight to her head. However, when she turns around, Peacemaker is shocked to see that there isn't even a hint of fear in her eyes, and moments later, an explosion is sent straight at him. And while Peacemaker managed to avoid it, the elf was burnt to a crisp, so he tossed her body away and looks up to see the masterminds behind this whole massacre. A witch and a mad scientist controlling the army of elves. The scientist is about to begin his evil monologue, but Deadshot isn't wasting any time and goes straight for a headshot, but unfortunately, the scientist had a force field ready to defend himself. Deadshot can't believe they had to deal with a dragon and now a mad scientist right after, and Harley asks if the scientist is here to get revenge for Ratcatcher. However, he couldn't care less about a loser like Ratcatcher. He just came here to destroy the fort, and since they've already accomplished their goal, the witch says there is no reason for them to fight the team. However, Harley isn't letting them leave without a fight after what they've done to her friends. Peacemaker throws a bomb at the scientist, and while his vision is obscured, Harley closes in on him and tries to smash through his shield with her bat. However, that doesn't go as planned since the scientist gets an elf to cast a wind spell and blow Harley away. He has no idea why she thought a bat would get through the shield when Deadshot's bullets couldn't do the trick, but he expected as much from simple, regular head people. He is so far ahead of them that he already predicted that Clayface would try to sneak attack him, so he orders the elves to block the attack for him. The Thinker proudly states that his army is far superior to the team because all his elves receive orders from a direct link to his brain. King Shark starts running in to attack, so the Thinker orders the elves to cast their wind spell and send hurricane force air blasts at him. However, King Shark is too beefy to get blown away, so the witch steps up to stop him with her shield. But his teeth are so sharp that he nearly bites straight through it. So to save herself, she flies into the air with her shield while King Shark is still hanging on. Harley wants to help him, but she's a little preoccupied with the elves, so King Shark is on his own. Once they are high in the sky, the witch destroys her barrier and sends King Shark falling into the water. And as soon as he has had the chance to regain his bearings underwater, he gets jumped by Killer Croc and a sea monster. Killer Croc is a bit faster than him, so King Shark is getting comboed out here, but he eventually manages to grab Killer Croc and pin him to a wall. However, before he could deliver a finishing blow, the sea monster pulls up again and Killer Croc holds King Shark in place to the sea monster a clear shot. Meanwhile, on the surface, Harley is doing her best to take out as many elf soldiers as possible, and as the elves line up to fire their hurricane spell again, Deadshot headshots them all before they get the chance. They all have each other's backs, but there are too many elves for them to make good progress. And the elves aren't the only thing they have to worry about either, as Mr. Egghead over here has a trick up his sleeve and uses those crystals to send everyone into their worst nightmares. Clayface is made a laughingstock on stage, Deadshot is held at gunpoint by his own daughter, and Peacemaker is trapped in a ruined city where he failed to save them. The three of them are incapacitated in reality, and Egghead is enjoying their suffering, but the witch just wants him to get it over with, so he calls for the special gun to be brought to him. And once he has it, he shoots all three of them in the chest. Harley can't believe what just happened, and the witch has the audacity to tell her to accept defeat and walk away, so Harley snaps at her and tries caving the witch's skull in. The witch tries to explain that it's not personal, she just has a temporary alliance with the Empire. She really doesn't want to go back to the prison, and she's not particularly fond of the Empire either, so she's just using them until she gets what she wants. Hearing this makes Harley even more angry because it's one thing to kill her friends, but it's much worse to do it for the Empire when she doesn't even like them. She calls out the witch for hopping from one scumbag to another, and that's the kind of person Harley hates with a passion. By this point, the witch has given up on trying to convince Harley to walk away, so she goes all out and blows Harley away. By the time Harley wakes up, she sees Rick telling Egghead and Witch to back off, otherwise he will blow their heads off their shoulders with the bombs in their necks. Now this is a bluff, but Egghead has no way of knowing whether Rick is telling the truth or not, so he asks why Rick didn't blow them up as soon as they got separated. Or better yet, why doesn't he blow them up now since it would get rid of two enemies at once? But Rick explains this by saying Amanda ordered him to capture them alive if possible, but he will blow them up if given no choice. Egghead buys the story, so he agrees to leave for now, and once he's gone, Rick goes over to check on Harley and she's crying her eyes out over the death of her friends. However, in a miraculous turn of events, Clayface wakes up a moment later and is perfectly unharmed, which makes sense because why would a bullet be enough to kill him in the first place? However, that plot hole aside, he attributes his survival to the fact that the bullet stopped on its own before going too deep, and it's the same with the others as well. So after Deadshot and Peacemaker wake up, Clayface asks if Deadshot had anything to do with the bullets not killing them, but he says he has no clue what happened, and the green glow on the bullets obviously isn't a cause for concern, so they all ignore it and head back to Capital, where they are immediately locked up in prison again. The Queen's Council have all seen the highlight reel of the team's defeat, and they are freaking out since they know there's no way they can defeat a perfect army of elves, a mad scientist, and a witch, but the Queen tells them to quit their bitching up because she has an announcement to make. Overall, the fort may have been destroyed and its occupants killed, but those occupants were just a bunch of ogre criminals, so why should they care if they got killed? The officials agree with her statement, but then the Queen continues, saying if anyone is to blame for the destruction of the fort, then it would be the ones who suggested it be left in the care of the ogres. This gives her an excuse to punish the team, so she orders that they all be hanged. The princess tries to speak up for them and say there's nothing they could have done to prevent this, and killing them wouldn't improve the kingdom's situation in any way, but the Queen is determined to go through with the execution since she wants to use it to send a message to the soldiers that accepting outside help never ends well. Later, the princess talks to Cecil about the decision the Queen made, and he agrees with Fiona that while it's true that the team was defeated, executing them isn't going to solve any problems at all. Fiona was once told that the duty of a royal is to bring an end to the war, but the Queen is clearly making judgments that are clouded by anger, so Fiona is not sure she can trust the Queen to do what's best for the kingdom with her recent actions. Cecil asks Fiona what her personal feelings are about the Otherworlders. He can't read the Queen's mind, nor does he understand what concerns might plague Fiona's mind, but he wants to know why she's grown so attached to the team. She doesn't really have an answer for him, but she says she just wants to believe in them. Cecil can understand her feelings about the team since he has grown slightly attached to them as well, so he suggests they do something to help them. Meanwhile, down in the prison, Rick suggests they break out so they can go take down Thinker and the Witch since they are the reason those guys are on the loose. However, Deadshot reminds him that the people to blame for that mishap are Rick and Argus. The current team just got called in to clean up the mess they created. Just then, Harley's pet dragon shows up, so Clayface suggests they should try getting him to help them escape. But unfortunately, Arthur's dragon flame isn't strong enough to do much, so the plan isn't going to work. That's when Cecil comes around the corner and tells them they should probably talk quieter if they are planning a prison break. But then, to the team's surprise, Cecil unlocks the prison door and tells them they have to leave immediately. If they stay here much longer, the Queen is going to have them executed, so Cecil plans to have them go out and defeat Thinker and the Witch in a rematch to get rid of the Queen's justification for executing them. Deadshot doesn't think it's fair for Cecil to ask them to fight again, but Cecil, this plan is for their own sake. As much as he doesn't like them, he understands that they are fighting for a kingdom they owe nothing to, so he doesn't want to let them die for nothing. Cecil lost his partner during this war, so he reminds them that they still have lives and loved ones to return to. Just then, the princess shows up and asks everyone to hurry up with their escape since she can't distract the guards forever. Harley is surprised to see that the princess is in on this prison break, so she asks her why she is doing it. Fiona still doesn't have an answer, but her whole life she has been told to listen to what her mother says, but now she's not so sure that it's the right thing to do, so she wants to make a decision for herself. Harley is convinced, so she and the others leave the cell and head to a carriage that had been prepared in advance. And as they leave, Peacemaker tells everyone that he has got a plan that might work to defeat the Thinker. Meanwhile, the Thinker is taking countermeasures against the team since while he had access to their minds, he was able to find out that they need to return to this gate every 3 days, otherwise they will blow up. And they can certainly still try, but Thinker isn't going to make it easy for them. The team arrives at the gate by morning, and they are surprised to discover that the Thinker has built an entire base around it in just one night. They already don't have a lot of time left on their timers, and the Thinker probably knows that, which is why he is going to do everything in his power to stop them from resetting it. The setup is well thought out, and there are even a bunch of elves all over the place to stand guard. They stand no chance if they rush in there with no plan, so Rick emphasizes the importance of everyone being patient this time around. He asks Clayface to create a replica of the base with clay, and once that's done, they begin mapping out all the areas where they've seen guards posted. On top of that, Harley spots the samurai girl there as well, and that makes it a lot more complicated since they would have to lure her away from the Thinker if they want any chance of defeating him. Harley tries suggesting that they should fight both Thinker and Samurai Girl at the same time since she still wants revenge for what Katana did to her, but that's a lot easier said than done. From the last time they fought, they know that the Thinker's elves all have their brains linked to receive orders from him. Normally this would have fried their brains to a crisp, but what makes it possible is the thinking cap the Thinker wears, so if they manage to get it off him, they will be a great advantage, but how they'll actually do that is another issue entirely. Harley thinks for a bit until she recalls a bank heist she once did with Joker. The bank was designed to be completely impenetrable, But none of the alarms or safe combinations actually mattered because all they needed to do to get inside was threaten the person who had all the keys. Peacemaker thinks the idea is brilliant and it fits perfectly into his plan, so he gets a wicked smile across his face and tells everyone what they need to do. First off, he, Harley, King Shark, and Clayface will approach the fortress from the back, but Clayface has his objections since the plan involves him being stuffed in a bag like a toy. King Shark stuffs him back in the bag, and Harley reminds him that he isn't allowed to eat Clayface, but King Shark says he would never do something like that since Clay tastes bad. His job is to get Clayface to the back of the fortress, but Clayface is freaking out because he will dissolve if he gets soaked in water, but King Shark promises to be careful so no water gets into the bag. While they are doing that, Rick and Deadshot will approach the fortress from the front, and after receiving the signal, Rick will launch an attack, luring the elves out and away from the fortress and leading them to the hut by the lake. In the meantime, he wants Deadshot to keep an eye on what's going on inside the tower and relay any important information to the others so that no one gets caught. As King Shark makes it to the back of the base, Rick and Deadshot are waiting for him to give the signal, but then they realize that they never actually decided on a signal while they were making this plan, so they don't know what to look out for. Just then, King Shark burps really loud, and that's good enough of a signal for him. So Deadshot tells Rick to get moving and kicks him down the hill, causing him to land right in front of the elves. The elves begin chasing him as they had planned, and while they are busy with that, Deadshot fires a grenade at his statue as part of the next phase of the plan. Inside the fortress, the Thinker is confident that no plan the team can come up with will be able to bring down his fortress in time. He assumes they will try using numbers or heavy weapons against him, but when nothing happens after a while, he gets concerned and calls Katana to come assist him. At the same time, Clayface is getting ready for the next part of his plan, so he sneaks into the base by shape-shifting into the Thinker, but as he is walking, he ends up running into the samurai girl by chance, and since she believes he is the real Thinker, Clayface has to put his acting skills to the test in order to keep her distracted long enough for the plan to work. Originally, the plan was that while Clayface was distracting Samurai Girl, Harley and Peacemaker will imprison one of the elves in a hut, but to do that, Peacemaker said he would disguise himself as an elf, and the others didn't think he could pull it off. To prove him wrong, Peacemaker immediately disguises himself, and while he may look good, there's no way any of the elves would think he was one of them, so they switched plans and just had King Shark snatch one. The captured elf wakes up in the hut with Peacemaker standing in front of him, and he is not in for a good time. Peacemaker knows all the elves have their minds connected as a single unit, but that also means they share a lot of the same sensations, so Peacemaker is going to make that sensation pain. The rest of the elf hive mind begins screaming in pain as Peacemaker tortures the captured elf, and he looks like he's enjoying this a little too much. The elves are all going crazy due to the shared pain, so the Thinker commands them all to stop standing around and go help the elf who is in trouble. All the elves begin making a mad dash for the hut, and this was all part of the plan as Harley and King Shark are posted outside the hut ready to knock them out as they come. While they are doing that, Deadshot fires another grenade at the base, and that's Harley's signal to start running. She leaves King Shark and Artie to handle the rest of the elves while heads off to face the Thinker. Meanwhile, the Thinker is furious that the elves are losing so badly despite being up against a team of 6 people. The team didn't bring an army, they didn't try using any magic weapons, and they didn't get any new abilities either, so he wonders what their plan could have been. However, he doesn't have to wonder for long as Harley busts into the room to stop him. He now realizes that they plan to get him alone so he wouldn't be able to use his soldiers to defend himself, but he still thinks the plan is stupid. He asks where Katana is, but Harley tells him Katana won't be able to come help him right now since she's pretty busy at the moment, so he's going to have to face Harley on his own. However, as Harley attacks, the Thinker shows that he isn't completely defenseless on his own, as his big brain allows him to predict all of Harley's attacks and dodge them. And with his control over the room, he is able to smack Harley away when she tries to get close again. This leaves Harley with a concussion, however, in her delirious state, she becomes impossible to predict because even she doesn't know what's going on. So as she throws her bat at him, the Thinker can't predict her thoughts and gets hit in the head. He realizes he won't be able to anticipate her moves when she isn't thinking clearly like this, but even so, he still believes he can win by prying deeper into Harley's mind like he did against the others. Harley isn't scared and dares him to do it, so the Thinker does so and peers straight into the darkest corners of Harley's mind, and he finds out that Harley used to be a regular old psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum, but then one fateful day she was assigned to treat the Joker and it all went downhill from there. The Thinker is really starting to regret looking into Harley's mind because it somehow backfired and made him experience the nightmare that gave birth to Harley Quinn. And by the time he wakes up, he finds Harley standing right in front of him, and in the next moment, he is sent flying across the room. Once the Thinker is knocked out, the elf soldiers all lose power and stop fighting. Rick and Deadshot show up soon after, and Peacemaker finally comes out of the shed with the captured elf, and the elf doesn't look like he had a good time. Rick is shocked to see how badly Peacemaker mangled the elf, but Peacemaker was very clear about the plan involving torture, so Rick is just as bad for agreeing to it. In any case, they've got to hurry since they don't have much time left before the bombs go off, but just as they are about to head to the portal, they notice the fortress begin to collapse, and Harley's currently running to make it out before the whole thing comes down. But at the same time, we see that the Thinker managed to survive, and as he is pulling himself out of the water, Katana shows up, but she's not here to help him. The fortress completely collapses, and Harley managed to make it out in one piece, but just when she thought things were finally over, she turns around to find Katana standing there while holding the Thinker's severed head. Harley is shocked since she thought Katana and the Thinker were on the same side, but Katana says she was just using him for his thinking cap, so she was planning to betray him anyway. But she has to give credit where it's due. The plan for Clayface to distract her was pretty good, even if he did end up losing to her anyway. She throws Clayface into the water where he starts dissolving away, and immediately after, she jumps down to face Harley. Harley charges at Katana with her bat, but it doesn't take long before she gets disarmed like last time, so it looks like she's in a bit of trouble. Clayface has regained consciousness by now, so Harley asks him for a bit of help, and he obliges by turning himself into a sword. Harley excitedly grabs the clay sword, and now that she is armed again, she re-engages with Katana and is able to hold her ground this time. With how sharp the clay sword is, Harley is even able to slice Katana's weapon in half, and after another brief exchange, Harley does a backflip off Katana's body and throws the clay sword to distract her, only to run up and catch the sword to strike again. Katana's mask gets cut off, and she's starting to respect Harley as a serious opponent. But before they can resume their fight, Deadshot fires at her and somehow misses the headshot, even though accuracy is his whole thing. This buys Katana enough time to flee and jump into the ocean, where the sea monster was waiting to help her escape. King Shark wanted to chase after them, but it would be a waste of energy, so the others tell him not to. It sucks that Katana got away, but at least none of them blew up since they got to the portal in time. Now, all that's left to do is report their victory, and to do that, they set the Thinker's flag ablaze with the help of Artie so the kingdom will know they are the ones who defeated the Thinker. Back in the kingdom, the queen is informed that the team managed to defeat the Thinker along with all his elves in one night. Fion is watching from outside the door and hoping that the queen reconsiders the value of the team to the kingdom. It turns out she was completely wrong as the queen doubles down and orders them to be brought back here and executed. And the queen is genuinely tweaking this time. As far as the council goes, the two high-ranking Mustachio members are arguing whether the team should be pardoned due to their contributions to the war effort. One believes they should be pardoned because they have proven themselves to be allies, while the other believes they are still traitors. The skinny mustache guy was making a good point, but the queen has her own thoughts on the matter, and she hates the team. She calls Theodore by name, and Theodore immediately knows he is on the queen's chopping block with her for praising the team, but the queen tries to calm him down and says there's no need to be worried. There's just one small thing she wants him to do for her. A while later, as the team returns to the castle, they are expecting to be served a huge feast for bringing down the Thinker's fortress. But once they enter the throne room, the atmosphere is a lot more hostile than they were expecting. Under the queen's orders, Theodore addresses them and begins belittling all their efforts, while also insulting them for their attitude, their outfits, and their way of fighting. The team tries to bring up the fact that they defeated the Thinker, but Theodore counters and says that the Thinker came from their world, so it's their fault that he was here in the first place. He then specifically targets King Shark and starts insulting him for being a fish, but he's too scared of him to do any more than that. By now, Harley has realized that Theodore is intentionally trying to provoke them into being violent, and Theodore really doesn't want to mess with her. But he is under orders from the queen to do this, so he walks up to Harley and slaps her. This would prove to be the worst mistake of his life because before Harley could even recover from the slap, King Shark had already eaten Theodore whole, mustache and all, and this is exactly what the queen was hoping would happen. Cecil tries to stop King Shark, but King Shark eats his sword, so he's about to recall it like last time and tear a hole through King Shark's stomach, but Deadshot stops him with a gun to his head. Things have gotten out of hand, so the team gets ready for a fight, but before this standoff can turn into an all-out battle, the queen uses her magic to restrain King Shark. She tries to act like this whole mess is the team's fault, but Harley knows for a fact that she planned this setup from the beginning as a way of getting rid of them. The queen orders her guards to execute everyone in the team, but Cecil and Fiona beg her to reconsider, so she relents and decides that she will only execute King Shark for eating Theodore, while the others will just be exiled from the kingdom. Deadshot doesn't want to let King Shark get executed, but he doesn't have much of a choice since the guards have him by the neck. The team is forced to leave the castle without King Shark, but as they are on their way out, Fiona comes running up to them, sincerely apologizing for how things turned out. But her apology just pisses Harley off more than she already is. Sure, Fiona doesn't agree with her mother's choices, but she also didn't even try to change the Queen's mind about them. After everything Fiona said about not wanting to blindly listen to the Queen, she still doesn't have the backbone to stand up for herself when it matters the most. If they knew she wasn't going to be able to follow through, then they wouldn't have wasted their effort fighting for the kingdom in the first place. After that, the team heads to a bar to drink away all their problems, and Deadshot is showing off his killer aim to win a bet for some free drinks. Meanwhile, Clayface is over here trying to impress some ladies with his powers and acting skills, but they just think he's using some weird kind of magic. Harley comes out from the back with a bottle in hand and a random jewel in the other, so Rick asks her where she got the jewel. She tells him that she got it from Cecil's armor as compensation for what the kingdom put them through, so she basically stole it. However, Rick has no reason to care, so he just leaves her alone and warns her not to end up drinking herself to death. Harley finds it funny that Rick is showing concern for her when her death would be rather convenient for him. Their mission was to come here and diplomatically steal resources from this world. However, now that relations with the kingdom have broken down, the team is basically useless to Amanda. And she knows what Amanda does when people outlive their usefulness. Just then, a bard gets on stage and offers to sing a song for everyone in the bar. It just so happens to be a song written about the team and the things they've done since coming here, but Harley doesn't like the way it portrays them as heroes, so she yells for the bard to quit singing since she doesn't want to hear it, and neither does Deadshot. The bard stops playing, but Clayface gets upset because he stopped before getting to the part about the heroic deeds of Clayface, so he asks the bard to continue singing. But Deadshot throws a bottle at the bard to shut him up, leading to a huge fight between him and Clayface. Deadshot starts firing at Clayface while causing a lot of collateral damage, and somehow, this woman manages to survive all these straight bullets. All the chaos ends up getting on Peacemaker's nerves, so he gets up to restore the peace with his fists. He's also not wearing any pants for some reason. And all this while, Rick is sick of this shit and contemplating how he is stuck dealing with this group of lunatics. By the next morning, Rick wakes Harley and the others up and tells them that they have to get ready to go. Harley is a bit confused, so he explains that they need to head back to the gate, but not because they are returning to Earth. After everything that has happened, it's obvious that they'll be called back to Earth sooner or later, but they need to get King Shark back before that. Rick has no idea how long it will take to get him back though, so he wants to just head to the gate so they can reset the bomb timers. As they are leaving, Clayface asks Harley if she's sure she really wants to leave Artie behind, but doing so would be much better for Artie, since if she took him back to Earth, then he would probably end up getting dissected or something. And it's not like Harley would be allowed to keep Artie even if they didn't experiment on him, because at the end of the day, she's still a criminal. He'd be much happier if he stayed in this world and lived freely. That aside, Deadshot is a bit confused why Rick wants to go through all the trouble to rescue King Shark in the first place when it would be much more convenient for him to just abandon him here. Rick says he doesn't want to leave King Shark behind because it would ultimately cause a lot of problems for this world, but that doesn't make any sense since the kingdom is going to execute him anyway. And they've had bombs in their necks this entire time, ready to execute any one of them at a moment's notice. So he doubts Amanda would care about losing King Shark. The group eventually makes it to the gate and their bombs have been successfully reset, so it looks like there are no problems. But then Rick gets a call from Amanda, which surprises everyone since they had no idea he had a radio this whole time. Rick informs Amanda of everything that has transpired over the past few days and how it probably isn't likely that they'll be able to earn the cooperation of the kingdom anymore. Amanda understands and tells Rick he has permission to return to Earth now, so he is to pass through the gate immediately. Rick tries to mention that King Shark is still being held by the kingdom, but Amanda tells him he doesn't need to worry about that since she will take care of it from her end. Just then, Clayface's neck bomb starts beeping, and in a matter of seconds, his head has been blown clean off his body. Rick asks Amanda why she killed him, and Amanda calmly says she has determined that this mission is too difficult to carry out, so she's going to close the gate once Rick is back on Earth, and she doesn't want to leave any traces behind. Rick starts yelling at Amanda for wanting to simply kill the team after she has no use for them, and she's probably going to get rid of him as well. Amanda assured Rick that she has no reason to get rid of him since he is still her loyal soldier, but the others, yeah, they gotta die. Harley starts yelling at Amanda for being a heartless pain in the ass, but just as Amanda is about to set off Harley's bomb, the team notices something crazy happening in the distance. It looks like the kingdom is on fire, so Rick begins pleading with Amanda to allow them to continue with the mission, since if the kingdom is in trouble and the team is able to save them, it may be enough to restore their diplomatic relations with them. Amanda eventually agrees to allow them to continue the mission, but she is only giving them 24 hours to do it. She has set the bombs to explode after the 24-hour time limit, so if they don't show results by then, everyone on the team will be blown up and Rick will no longer be allowed to return to Earth. Once Amanda ends the call, Rick sighs in relief, but Harley and the others are confused about why Rick would risk his own safety to save their lives. Rick explains that while they may be scumbags back on Earth, and here as well for that matter, they are at least seen as good enough here to have songs written about their heroic deeds. Just then, Clayface speaks up and reminds Rick that he has done some pretty evil stuff while they've been together, but everyone is just freaked out that he's still alive. They clearly saw his head get blown off, but remember, his entire body is made of clay, so that explosion was never going to be enough to kill him. Peacemaker asks him why he decided to go along with the mission if the bombs were never a threat to him, but Clayface just thought it would be fun to be a protagonist on an isekai adventure. That aside, they only have 24 hours to get this done and the castle is pretty far away, so they've got to hurry back. And concerning why the castle is on fire in the first place, 2 hours earlier, Princess Fion had gone to see the Queen in an attempt to get her to stop the execution of King Shark, but when she saw her, it became clear that the Queen had gone off the deep end. Cecil is questioning whether the path he is taking is one that is right for a knight. However, he suddenly hears a commotion going on outside, so his guard offers to go check it out, but as soon as he opens the door, he gets stabbed through the stomach by a sword. The person who did it looks to be under the same kind of mind control the Thinker used, and the one holding the controls turns out to be none other than the fat mustachio man. Cecil accuses the minister of treachery, but the minister doesn't see what he is doing as wrong in any way. He says he is just fulfilling his duty as a minister of his kingdom because the Queen is on board with this whole operation. Cecil threatens to end him if he has done anything to Fion, but the minister says he should worry about making it out of here alive first. At the same time, Fion has just discovered that the person standing in front of her isn't her real mother, so she asks what happened to her. The imposter states that she already disposed of the Queen, and when questioned about her motives, she explains that her power increases with every death that occurs. So she set out to instigate war between the kingdom and the empire for the sake of restoring her power, and taking on the appearance of the Queen just made things easier for her. Fion is horrified and enraged, so she grabs a nearby stick and runs at the imposter to try and kill her. However, she has no fighting experience, so the imposter easily disarms and grabs her by the neck. She finds it funny that Fion actually thought a stick would be enough to defeat her. The only reason the imposter lost to the kingdom in the first place was because they used the sacred sword to rob her of her powers, but right now that sword is stuck in King Shark's belly, so there's nothing that can stop her now. She mocks Fion for always being such an obedient mommy's girl, because no matter how strange the imposter acted, Fion could never build up the courage to question her. It's almost a pity to lose such a well-trained pet, but she's still going to kill Fion regardless. However, before she can claw out Fion's face, a sword is thrown into the room and knocks her hand away. Cecil then gets in front of Fion so he can protect her, and demands to know who the imposter is. Since she has already accomplished her goal, the imposter sees no reason to keep her identity hidden any longer, so she undoes her disguise and reveals her true form. As soon as she does this, Cecil realizes that the imposter is the undead king, and he is mad beyond belief, but he can still think clearly, so rather than charging forward into a losing battle, he casts a flashbang and grabs Fion's hand so they can escape for now. The undead king is disappointed that she couldn't kill them immediately, but they couldn't have made it far, so she orders the fat minister to find them. Cecil has taken Fion to her room and barricaded the door to buy them some extra time. However, Fion is so devastated by the news that her mother was disposed of that the only thing she can think to do is to cry. Cecil retrieves a golden dagger and hands it to Fion, telling her that she must be strong because she is the last hope for this kingdom. Fion knows she has to stand up for the sake of the kingdom, but it's true that she has never had the backbone to defy her mother openly, which is why she always listened obediently to her mother's orders, and she hates the pathetic side of herself. But if she wants to stop being such a wimp, she decides that she is going to need to reinvent herself first. So as the fat minister shows up and knocks the door down, he finds Fion standing by herself in the middle of the room, and she's clearly taking a lot of inspiration from Harley as she has the makeup done and proceeds to knock the minister out with a bat. With the minister knocked out, all the guards that were being mind-controlled collapse to the ground as well, so by the time Cecil comes running out to ambush them, it's already over. Fion tells Cecil that it's time to fight back against the undead king, so Fion wants to rally the support of everyone who isn't undead yet. Meanwhile, the undead king arrives in the village and uses her powers to summon the corpses of the people who have died here and turn them all into undead monsters. The living people begin to scream out in terror as they run from the undead monsters, and the sounds of fear and chaos are delightful to the undead king's ears. However, to her great displeasure, Thyone makes an announcement to the people, telling them not to give up hope because that's exactly what the undead king wants. She goes on to say that she will fight for the well-being of all her people, so she wants them all to fight alongside her. The undead king hates the hope Thyone is giving the people, so she uses her control over the sea monster to cause a water vortex that floods the entire castle. She then goes up to Thyone and tries to make it very clear that there is nothing she can do to defeat her. However, Thyone was already aware of that, which is why she was just buying time for backup to arrive. The undead king is confused by Thyone's statement, but then a second later she gets shot by Deadshot, who's here along with the whole crew. Deadshot wants to hurry up and save the world before everyone ends up turning into zombies, so the team splits up into two groups. One group will deal with saving Princess Thyone, while the other group will go zombie hunting. Harley and Deadshot head down to the city streets where they hold off the advancing zombies and occasionally take shots at the undead king. The undead king finds it annoying to have to dodge so often, so she summons Enchantress and has her fight instead. Enchantress doesn't like being forced to fight, but she has no choice but to obey, so she begins attacking Harley and Deadshot. They are forced to seek shelter since a single attack from her could kill them. But Harley gets fed up with all this running around, so she directly confronts Enchantress. However, she gets a built-in drop on her. Luckily, she gets saved by an old friend, Arthur, who has grown really big since the last time she saw him. Arthur is glad to see Harley again, so to help her out, he targets Enchantress, but she's able to evade him, so they are going to need another way to get to her. Just then, Harley remembers the magic gem she stole from that suit as it begins to glow, so she tries putting it on her gun, which makes it glow as well and allows her to fire a magic bullet that actually damages Enchantress. Enchantress is enraged that she actually took damage, so she tries to burn everything down with a wave of fire, but Arthur saves the day by countering with his own fire. However, the shockwave still blows Deadshot away. By the time Deadshot opens his eyes, he is backed into a corner by the undead, so he starts trying to smash his way out before he gets overrun, but luckily, Cecil comes to his aid and mag dumps until all the undead are gone, although with his shooting skills he put Deadshot in more danger than the undead. With the magic gun, Harley is finally able to bring Enchantress down, and now she's got some questions for her. After using magic for the first time, Harley realizes that Enchantress was the one who stopped the bullets back when Thinker shot them, and she didn't look happy to be following the Undead King's orders, so Harley assumes the Undead King is holding something that is important to Enchantress hostage. At the same time, Clayface and Rick find a dragon skeleton in the woods with Enchantress's real body sealed away, and they are not sure what it's supposed to be, but it must be important. The person inside looks a lot like Enchantress, so Clayface believes it might be the key to stopping Enchantress. But if he is correct, then it's not going to be easy to get to her since the Undead King probably took precautions. In order to retrieve the body, Clayface transforms himself into a griffin in an attempt to scare the skeleton dragon, and all he managed to accomplish was gaining the dragon's attention and making it attack him instead. That wasn't his intention, but the distraction buys Rick enough time to get Enchantress's body out of the dragon. But the dragon immediately explodes after he does so, sending Enchantress's body flying into a tree and causing pain to Enchantress while she's in a standoff with Harley. Enchantress is pissed and tells Harley to stop messing with her body, but Harley hasn't even done anything yet, so she doesn't know what Enchantress is talking about. Just then, Rick calls in to tell her that they found something that may have something to do with Enchantress, so Harley asks them to bring it here so that she can use it to convince Enchantress not to attack them anymore. Rick tries telling her that carrying a body isn't exactly easy, but the call cuts out before he can explain that. Harley then gets Enchantress' attention and tells her that she knows the Undead King must have stolen something important from Enchantress to get her to work for her. But her friends have stolen it back, so there's no reason for her to keep fighting for the Undead King. Enchantress seems like she's willing to side with Harley if she gets her body back, but then another wave of pain and hits her, so she changes her mind and says she won't forgive them for what they are doing to her. Harley doesn't know what is going on to make her so mad, but as we cut to how Rick and Clayface are transporting Enchantress's body, I can see why she's mad. Although it's not like they are doing this because they want to either, it's because they are being chased by the skeleton dragon after it put itself back together. They end up crashing into a tree with Enchantress's face, and the dragon catches up to them, so it's about to burn them to ash. However, before it does, it gets sliced cleanly in half by Katana. Rick asks Katana why she saved them, but Katana doesn't answer, and instead tells them that they should hurry up and get Enchantress's body to Harley before disappearing. Now that they actually have time, the two start wondering how they should carry Enchantress's body, and Clayface says he has a good idea of how they can transport it. Meanwhile, Deadshot drags Cecil into a bar after he gets himself wounded. Cecil was trying to protect Deadshot, which is what left him in this state, and he doesn't know how much longer he is going to last, so he tells Deadshot to take his armor. Deadshot sees Cecil bleeding through the armor, so he tells him that he had better keep it on, but it's already too late for him. So Cecil asks Deadshot to please protect the kingdom and save the princess in his place. Deadshot is frustrated by Cecil just when they were starting to get along, so he punches a piece of the armor in anger, but this activates the magic imbued within the armor, and it causes it to fire a powerful blast through the bar wall. Deadshot is shocked because while he recalls Cecil mentioning that the armor was imbued with magical properties, he didn't realize just how powerful it was. He refused to take the armor a moment ago, but now that he knows what it can do, he goes full Power Ranger and begins his transformation. After he is done, he fires his gun at some of the approaching undead, and the blast is even better than he was expecting, and if just the arm pieces can do this much, he wonders how much more damage he could do if he had the whole set. Meanwhile, Enchantress is still attacking Harley for what the others are doing to her body, so Harley calls for Arthur to come pick her up so she can face Enchantress in the sky, but Enchantress starts making weird faces, so Harley is beginning to wonder what is actually going on with the body. She looks over and sees Clayface and Rick approaching, and it looks like they stuffed Enchantress's body inside Clayface in order to make it here quicker. And while they at least aren't smashing her face into things anymore, it still feels really slimy and gross to have Clayface all over her body. As soon as she spots them heading this way, she darts down to get her body back, and by now the Undead King has realized that Enchantress is trying to get her body back. So if Enchantress isn't going to be obeying her orders anymore, then she sees no reason to keep her alive anymore. It's a shame that she has to kill her, but she can always just resurrect her as part of her undead army later, so she prepares a blast to take her out. Rick and Clayface get cut off by a bunch of undead in their way, and Enchantress comes flying in from above, demanding that they get away from her body, but as she's flying towards it, she gets shot out of the sky by the Undead King's blast. Harley tries to save Enchantress, but she leaves herself wide open for the Undead King to target her with a second blast. However, before she could get hit, the blast was intercepted by Deadshot. Enchantress ends up crashing into Clayface, and while inside him, she manages to fuse back with her body and incinerate all the undead monsters nearby. Since Enchantress has her body back and no longer needs to follow the orders of the Undead King, Harley asks if this means she's going to help them now. However, Enchantress makes it clear that she isn't doing this to help them. Her only goal is to get revenge on the Undead King for holding her hostage and using her as a tool. Clayface says Enchantress is just playing hard to get, but all the people here, she is definitely not going to help Clayface in any way, not after he got Clay in all her crevices. However, her rant is cut short as the Undead King arrives above them and declares that she has grown tired of their resistance, so she's going to get rid of them once and for all. And to do it, she needs to sacrifice her arm to her staff. With the power she got from the sacrifice, she restores the skeletons that have already been defeated, but she really sacrificed a whole arm just to have Enchantress burn all those skeletons to ash immediately. Harley tries to take out one of the skeletons with her magic gun, but the gun is doing no damage. However, she is luckily saved by Deadshot again, who takes it down in one shot. Everyone meets again, and Rick asks them if they have any idea of where Fion is, but none of them have managed to get to her since the castle bridge was taken down. It was probably done in order to keep the undead from getting into the castle, so Fion should be fine, but that aside, they really have to address the fact that Deadshot is just floating in the sky above them. Deadshot reaches into his bag and pulls out a couple of pieces of armor for everyone, and when they ask where he got these, he tells them that he got it from Cecil's body. They think that must mean Cecil is dead, but that's not exactly the case. At first, Deadshot thought Cecil was dead, but it turned out that the wound wasn't as severe as he had thought, so he patched Cecil up and took all his armor. Well, since they've got some gear now, they all put it on and go through their own transformation cutscenes. Rick is impressed with the team's new look, and they waste no time in showing him what they can do. After they're done with their rampage, the ground stands triumphantly as they admire their work, but unfortunately, the undead will just keep coming back unless they take out the Undead King. Enchantress soon arrives to burn down a couple of undead, and she says she will handle these monsters while the team goes to kill the Undead King. They take her up on her offer and fly into the sky to take her head on. However, as Deadshot was lining up his sights on her, she turns to him and fires dozens of blasts in his direction. He uses his gun to counter a couple of them, but they are ultimately too many, so Rick and Arthur get hit and end up falling to the ground. Harley flies down to save them, and once she catches up, she creates a magic shield in front of them to minimize the fall damage. They crash land into the palace, and Fion comes running up to them to ask if they are alright. Harley says they are more or less fine, and Rick is just glad to see that the princess is still alive. The princess thanks them for their help since they apparently crash-landed on top of a bunch of skeletons that she and the guards were fighting. Harley takes a moment to appreciate Fion's new sense of style, and she really likes it, as well as the personality change since this assertive version of Fion is much less annoying. Their chat is cut short when they are reminded of that battle occurring overhead, so Rick asks Fion if she can help them with her magic. Unfortunately, Fion says that it's impossible since the undead king can only be killed with the sacred sword, and that sword is currently inside King Shark's belly, so they aren't getting it back anytime soon. However, Fion still does have magic as she starts healing Harley's hand, so Harley thinks of a great plan and asks Fion to do something for her. As the others are still fighting the undead king, they aren't able to make any progress since they are unable to damage the undead king. They are all defeated one by one, and the undead king mocks them for thinking they ever stood a chance just because they got some borrowed power from the holy armor. However, she is cut off as Rick shoots her in the head to her attention, and Harley begins flying up towards her on Arthur. The undead king doesn't see her as a threat, so she just grabs Harley off the back of Arthur and begins strangling her to death. After rallying the annoyance Harley has caused, the undead king promises to make her suffer the most agonizing deaths over and over, but in her confidence, she failed to realize that the person dangling in front of her isn't actually Harley. Now that Fion is in position, she uses her magic to summon the divine sword from King Shark's belly, and as it flies towards her hand, it cuts straight through the undead king's neck, killing her for good. As the undead king's head falls to the ground, she catches a glimpse of Katana smiling at her downfall, and while calling her the Emperor, she yells at her for setting this whole thing up. However, no one cares what she has to say, so Harley uses her bat to smash the undead king's head in and blow it to pieces. After things go back to normal, Fion is crowned as the new queen of the kingdom, and she's handing out rewards to all those who help fight against the undead king. As it gets to Harley's turn, she's handed a scroll thanking her for saving the kingdom, but she can't read any of the words on it, and she just wants to get some food to eat. Cecil tells her she is being rude, but Fion says it's alright and informs Harley that a banquet is waiting for her and her team outside, and Harley is delighted to hear that. Meanwhile, Rick gives a status update to Amanda and tells her that they have managed to successfully create good relations with the kingdom, so they will soon be able to create bridgeheads and collect resources from this world. Amanda is pleased to hear that, but the resource acquisition was only the secondary objective, so she asks for a full status report. Rick tells her that the primary objective is still ongoing, but he has something he wanted to ask about. He saw Katana in this world, but that shouldn't be possible because she is standing right next to Amanda at this very moment. There's only one person who could be behind this, and we see exactly who Amanda is talking about. The Joker. He has been using illusion magic to keep his identity hidden. Also, he can get the thrill of watching people struggle to survive on the verge of death. Amanda has no idea what Joker's motives may be since no one understands how that lunatic thinks, but for now, she wants Rick to continue his mission and hunt down the Joker as well. This was the final episode. Subscribe for more anime recaps.